Good afternoon to you. Mark Seth with HurricaneTrack.com here with your off-season edition of the old hurricane outlook and discussion. It's the off-season. It's December. It's December the 14th. Our new logo reflecting that we're going to be doing more off-season stuff. And this video usually once per week. However, this week it may be a little bit more frequent than that. We'll see. We got a major winter storm coming up, hence the graphic there in the background. But first, we do have some tropical stuff, some hurricane season related stuff, tropical cyclone topics for you to start things out with. It's always hurricane season somewhere, and that being the case, way over in the southwestern Pacific, we do have a tropical cyclone in between Fiji and Vanuatu. I'll show you where that is on a map in just a moment. Why is it rotating clockwise, you may ask yourselves? Well, that's because it's in the southern hemisphere. And when these systems are in the southern hemisphere, they rotate clockwise. And this is a cyclone, which is the same as a hurricane and is the same as a typhoon. They're all the same thing, they just have different names depending on what region of the world that they exist in. Here's Vanuatu over here. This is part of the Fiji Islands right here. And this cyclone moving very slowly, trying to get organized, and it may drift down eventually towards Fiji in the coming days. I'll show you that on the GFS output in just a moment. This will give you a better idea of where this is located. The cyclone currently in here somewhere. Here are the islands of Fiji. Here's Vanuatu, and the cyclone is located in here and may drift down towards a very slow mover towards Fiji in the coming days. We can see that on the GFS. Yes, they do have the GFS for other places. That's why it's called the Global Forecast System. And here is the cyclone right here. Here are the Fiji Islands. Here's Vanuatu. And there is New Zealand, just to give you some perspective. New Caledonia right there. Probably, from what I've heard and seen, rumor has it that this is a beautiful part of the world. Maybe one day I'll get to travel there. Either Fiji, like Truman Burbank wanted to do in the Truman Show, remember? Or even down to New Zealand. What a wonderful area of the world. Someday on the bucket list. In the meantime, though, here's the cyclone. Back to the topics, Mark. You can tell winter's already getting to me, wanting to travel to warm tropical lands. So let's put this into motion, and you notice, it's in motion, but it's really not going fast anywhere. But it does really intensify the global model there, the GFS getting it down into the 930s with a fairly close brush to Fiji. And we got to watch that. This is about 84 hours to 96 hours out. And then it goes on by, drifting farther to the south and then bends to the southwest with time out at about a week or so. So, yeah, got to watch this for the area of Fiji. Maybe it can bend a little bit sharper, more to the west, and avoid bringing them any direct impacts and spare them. That stuff's, they've got some bad ones over there in past years. I think Winston was the name of one. I think this one's called Yasa, Y-A-S-A, or something like that. Nevertheless, wanted to point this out to you. It's always hurricane season, tropical cyclone season somewhere, and our friends over in the Southwest Pacific will be watching that closely, I am sure. Hopefully they will. All right, also, we're still obviously in mid-December, but as you know, Dr. Phil Klotzbach and his team from Colorado State University, he works with several colleagues, they release, in recent years, more of a qualitative look ahead, kind of the old, if you follow ESPN after the NCAA tournament, remember when we had those? Like the day after the national championship, they would release like a much too early top 25 for the coming hurricane season, basketball season. And so this is kind of like that. This is a lot more scientific, though, I think, than what you see from ESPN. But I'm just trying to connect you here to get you to understand there is merit to this, and these are the things that people with much higher education prowess than me look at, and that's Dr. Klotzbach, and Colorado State University has been doing this for about 38 years, making good progress. You got to start somewhere, and so this is what it says. Okay, we'll just get on with it. The abstract, they are looking ahead in terms of the qualitative factors. What do we look for? And these are those signals that I talk about. And we look at these together. We've been doing this for several years. And it just follows suit that Colorado State started doing it this way, instead of saying in December, oh, I think we're going to have 12 named storms next hurricane season or whatever. It's more of, what do we look for? And the one of the, I won't say the number one thing, these are not necessarily in any particular order, but the strength of the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation. In other words, how warm or cold is the Atlantic relative to average? Generally speaking, it's not quite that simple, but that's a simplified way to look at it. And then the phase of the ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation. And please excuse the throat clearing. I have a bit of a small upper respiratory infection, nothing major, so don't go getting worried about me, but that explains the throat clearing. So these are the factors, and they talk about here, and I say they, Phil is the author, Dr. Klotzbach, but it is, a group of people that really help him out here. So we've had quiet seasons from 13 to 15, and then slightly above average in 16, very busy in 17, you know how it was, 18, 19, and then hyperactive this year. So it looks like we're in this still warm phase of the AMO. High confidence that the AMO remains in a positive phase, although the far North Atlantic has generally been characterized by below average sea surface temperatures, especially during the winter. So what are they showing? Well, or suggesting. And this is, again, just a quick look at some of the things that they will be watching. Dr. Klotzbach et al. Add their probabilities of which one of these has the best chance. And right now, odds favor a busy season next year, slightly above average, 35% chance right now. But coming in at number 2 at a 25% chance that it's a very busy season. So that's an interesting perspective there, that we got a 1 in 4 shot that next year is just as busy, 30 named storms, but that we have a hyperactive season is what it all comes down to, an ace of 170 or so. A 1 in 4 shot of that happening, that's pretty significant, right? If my math, right? 25% is 1 in 4 still. I know they've changed math, trust me. If you have little children, you know what I'm talking about. But wow, so we got to really watch this, and that's what we do in the off season on a weekly basis. Let's jump down here to page 10 of his report. This is very nice. I'm going to put a link to it in the description of today's video in case you want to do some reading. And so this is what he was talking about. One of the big questions that remains out there, and he says it is one of these big scientific questions over the past few years, is the predominant trend to this negative horseshoe look to the cold anomalies in the Atlantic. And it's this deal right here. In a classic AMO, these negative anomalies would be warm like these. And in the wintertime, more than likely owed to strong zonal winds going across the Atlantic these last several years, because of the positive North Atlantic oscillation that has to do with pressure anomalies and so forth, that it cools off the North Atlantic, keeps it nice and rumbled up, if you will, lots of storms going through, cold air, the works. And so you get this cold Atlantic, and that cold water sinks, and it creates these currents that come down the Canary Current, off the coast of Africa, out into the tropical Atlantic. But then, for whatever reason, and he doesn't know, nobody knows for sure, it's a mystery, in the spring and summer, we return to the warm part, and that's what he says here, of the AMO. This flips back to being more warm. And that's what we had this year and last year, and all the way back to 2016 for the most part. But it was definitely a warm Atlantic this year, and they're thinking that despite all of the sort of cold look to the AMO during the wintertime, yes, it'll trend positive by next year's hurricane season. So that helps me to segue into this. The old sea surface temperature anomaly map. We used to call this the NOAA NESDIS. Now it is our coral reef watch. Daily 5 kilometer sea surface temperature anomaly map. It updates every day. La Nina still holding on. Atlantic still warmer than average, especially in the northwest Atlantic. Starting to see a little bit of a cool phase set up. I mean, it's the same song and dance. It's like we're in this rhythm over the past several years, and we'll see. We're many months away. Yes, lots of things can happen, but I guess nature is stuck in some kind of a rut. Not much to really get into for this map here. It's pretty much status quo. And if we look at the Southern Oscillation Index, a good barometer, quite literally, haha. And if you know about the SOI, you know why that's funny. But the SOI is still very much positive. Look at today's contributor, plus 21. The 90-day average is 8.66. The 30-day is now higher than November's average. And it's just generally up and up and up, kind of like the stock market has been for most of the year, at least after March and April, right? So this is an index, just like the stock market is. It's just an index. It's derived. It's not a unit of anything. It's just showing you, in this case, the difference between pressure in Tahiti and Darwin. Of course, Darwin is in Australia. So when these numbers are all positive, like we're seeing here, that, folks, is the signature of a La Nina, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. All right, real quick, breezing through some of this faster now. Water temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico cooling off as they should. Just wanted to show you this. 26 Celsius line, or around 80 Fahrenheit, finally has retreated all the way down into the southeast Gulf through the Yucatan Channel here. Another little pocket of warmth in the Bay of Campeche and the southwestern Gulf. But on the whole, it's been an active enough early part of the winter, at least meteorological winter, that the northern Gulf cooled off pretty significantly. The shelf waters up here, a little bit too cold for my taste. You have to go way down to the Keys in southeast Florida or Cancun or Cozumel to enjoy the nice tropical warm water. It's retreating, which it should do. We need that. We can't be having hurricanes 10 months out of the year or anything like that. That'll just be getting crazy. Pass. Okay, we got to have some off season. All right, off the East Coast, nothing bitterly cold. The gradient up here, and that is the difference of anything over distance in this case. And here we're talking about the temperature gradient. You got water temperatures in the low to mid 70s through here, and then several hundred miles away, water temperatures in the 40s and upper 30s, stuff like that. And so it's not this tremendous steep gradient like you have, as an example, right off the Outer Banks. Water temperatures are near 80, and then all that kind of dark color you see in there, those are the different contour lines of the isotherms, or lines of equal temperature. This is all Celsius. I was mentioning Fahrenheit, but whatever. And it cools off pretty quickly towards the coast. In other words, if you left Ocracoke Island and went out just 20 miles, you would go from brr to nice and toasty. I guess, 78, 79, that's toasty enough for me, compared to 65 or something like that. And it's a fairly short distance that you would reach that water. That's just kind of cool. So just literally. So I just want to show you this. This is how the sea surface temperatures are evolving as we move forward. All right, now, it is the off season, so we're going to talk about, and it's winter time too. The tropics part's done, so we're going to get into the winter weather. Obviously, the big story coming up is this major winter storm. And I'm just going to put this out there, all for the National Weather Service adopting naming the major winter storms. They do it in Europe and the UK, which is part of Europe. They name these big storms that come off the Atlantic. Not all of them, but a really impactful storm. They usually preface it with storm so-and-so, right? They do that. It is an official adopted thing. They're not owned by a company. I know the Weather Channel does it as a marketing strategy, and that's fine. If you don't like it, don't watch the Weather Channel. I mean, you have that right. That's the good thing about this country. No one is going to force you to like it or watch them if you don't agree with their naming of these winter storms. But this one, I think they're naming it Gale, if I understand, Gail. I might be wrong, but anyway, this is an argument for naming winter storms that are going to have a big impact instead of the Northeast storm or the Mid-Atlantic storm or this storm or that storm. And you can even have significant storms that impact the Northwest, California, especially during El Nino years, these bomb cyclones. It would just simplify things, just like we do with hurricanes. So, you know what? That's all I'm going to say about it. You got my vote. If somebody ever asked me and it mattered, and, it's all going to come down to Mark. Yes, we should name the winter storms. The big ones, the really impactful ones that are going to have significant impacts for large population centers. And the details could be worked out. That being said, we're going to have a big, impactful winter storm for a major corridor of the U.S. where millions of people live. And it's going to start, I should have included, western North Carolina, upstate South Carolina, and actually it's starting already back over parts of the plains. So yes, it's a big deal, and there's a lot coming up with it. So I'm going to go through a couple things and then just kind of point you in the direction of people who can give you information that will help you really understand this storm, and we're going to kind of approach it from that perspective. And there's a few things I want to point out as well. So here is the current setup from the GFS to 12Z GFS today. See right there, initialized 12Z today. And we got this large area of Arctic high pressure trying to come out of Canada up here. You can see the center of the high over there, 1034 millibars. Surface low. This is not the winter storm, by the way. And see, there you go. That's what I'm talking about. It's like if we had 3 named tropical systems out there, we wouldn't say, well, here's number 1, number 2. We do that with the invests, 91L, 92L. And then when they become a named storm, Bertha, Fran, Bonnie, whoever, you get the idea. It just helps keep stuff straight. Anyhow, it's just irritating sometimes. Maybe the Weather Channel is on the right track. That's all I'm saying. It would be helpful. So, this is the first storm, sort of the predecessor. And then the other one's going to take shape out here, at least some of the upper level energy with the surface low. You'll see, it's complicated, as the expression goes. So our first system moves on out. But then watch what happens. Keep your eye on this high pressure area right here. And then we have some storminess, a little bit of energy coming out of the Four Corners region across the panhandle of Texas. This is tomorrow morning, Tuesday morning. So watch what happens as we go to Tuesday afternoon. There's the high, there's the center of it. I'm going to kind of outline it for you right here. And look at how that high pressure noses its way down into and around, well, it wraps around the Appalachians here. We call that cold air damming. Cold air is dense, and here's your meteorological physics lesson of the day. If I had syrup and I poured it in my hand, like good old thick syrup, it would hit my hand and spread out very slowly and then ooze off the edges, right? If I had water, like my little glass of water to keep my throat from being too scratchy, that would pour off and just, it's much more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's less dense, the water is, compared to the syrup. So cold, dense air filters and oozes, if you will, not literally, but it's able to work its way down, and it's very important here. Cold air is denser and thicker in the atmosphere than warm, moist air. Hence why warm, moist air rises, okay? Warm, moist air is lighter. Believe it or not, moist air is lighter than dry air. I know that's like completely bizarre, but it's true. So that's what we're seeing here. I'm going to use blue to help highlight this. The cold air is going to be in place, and that is hugely important. Now, it's not ridiculously cold, 20s and teens, and it's just going to be cold enough. But that gets set up, and that's very important because as we get to Tuesday night into early Wednesday, that high pressure anchored up here over southeast Canada, filtering in the cold air via northeast winds, and it's just gradually piling in there, getting thicker and thicker from the bottom up. That cold air comes in, it drains on the east side of the Appalachians, and it just gets thicker in the atmosphere. Hugely important in a winter storm event for a lot of reasons. So you notice too, very weak low pressure starting to form off of the coast of the Carolinas and Georgia. And then our system over here starting to take shape, coming out of the Four Corners today and through tomorrow. And then finally, by Wednesday morning, The western parts of the Piedmont, it really starts to crank with ice probably early on. Low pressure develops right off of Cape Fear here. Snow starts to break out on the northern side. There's the 1037 millibar high. Strong northeast, well, not too strong, but persistent enough northeast winds, the cold air effect, the damming effect east of the Appalachians, and so forth. Yes, the cold air will be in place this time, but it's not January or February. This is not cross-polar flow, so it's not that bitter, solid, like where we're going to get snow all the way guaranteed down to D.C. and Baltimore. You're going to get some snow, but it's just not quite that time yet for you to get walloped. At least it doesn't look that way. So as this progresses, this is Wednesday afternoon, the storm really starts to crank up. I say it really starts to crank up. It's only about 1,002, and then the low 990 millibars or so right off of Jersey, and then off it goes into the Atlantic. And you can see along that backside of it that cold air in place. And so yes, there will be a swath of some fairly heavy snows up through this region. You've probably seen the snow maps, so forth and so on. So here's what I want to help you understand. All right, we're going to have the cold air in place. Like I said, it's going to kind of wedge its way in. Not going to look at blizzard conditions. Why? Because the storm itself is not going to be that strong, the low pressure, so the wind is not going to be as big of a problem. So I don't foresee, except maybe some local areas, maybe Long Island or eastern parts of Massachusetts might see some close to blizzard conditions, but I haven't seen much mention of it at all. So the wind is not going to be a big factor here. This is going to be one of those, it's just cold enough, maybe upper 20s, to snow, and snow pretty significantly. Heavy wet snow, big accumulations in some of the areas, probably just to the northwest of the I-95 corridor. So Fredericksburg, Virginia, D.C., Baltimore, up to Philadelphia. Yes, you're going to see some snow. How much snow? Well, I don't know that. Nobody knows for sure. But I think the heaviest snow is going to be in this axis from what I've seen, and it makes sense, just inland a little further towards east central Pennsylvania, up through interior Connecticut, interior Massachusetts, and that area. Maybe western parts of Long Island. We'll just have to wait and see, because the high pressure area is just not quite what we look for in January and February especially. So this is kind of like the analogy to a June or July hurricane instead of one of those classic August-September hurricanes. An early season winter storm doesn't quite have the makings of a blizzard. And here's one thing to keep in mind. Who gets this heavy wet snow is a big deal. One of our supporters, his name is Tom, and he made mention to me, he's a property management, has some property that he keeps on top of over in the Baltimore area. And you got to keep those parking lots clear, right? And so this is a real problem. And if you only get a couple of inches, well, that's one thing. And it's also important if it's a couple of inches of fluffy snow versus wet snow, or 6 inches, 12 inches. You understand? So that's where this becomes important. What kind of snow? This is going to be the heavier wet snow. It's going to be harder to shovel, harder to keep up with the plowing, whether it's the big-time DOT plows or, as Tom mentioned with his properties that he keeps up with, the parking lots. You're doing it yourself or through a service that you hire, and that becomes expensive and problematic. And so these are the intricate details that we try to look at, aside from how much snow we're going to get. It's not all about that. And remember, with hurricanes, it's not just the category, but what are the impacts? So don't look at this as just big winter storm coming, how much snow am I going to get? We got to change the way we look at the weather to understand how it could affect us, those we love, those we work with, and so forth. And here's another great example of that. A tremendous amount of emphasis is going to be placed on the snow, and rightfully so. But just like we talk about in hurricanes with wind, everybody's focused on the wind in the category. But then you forget about the rainfall. Oh, we forgot about the 30 inches of rain. Geez. Well, people are looking at that, and it's the same with winter storms. Eric Webb, great tweet from him today. Look at the ice. That's going to be a big problem. The 12Z National Weather Service blend of the models from the freezing rain accumulation model, the FRAM, through Wednesday, and this is from pivotalweather.com, one of their graphics, and you get the idea here, and we'll zoom in on it in a minute. There's parts of the western Carolinas and the western Piedmont region through the foothills of the Appalachians in Virginia, southwest Virginia. Ice could be a big problem. You want to go driving on ice? I don't. Forget that. And you think, what are those values, Mark? 1/10 of an inch? Dude, that's seriously. This is where you have to understand the impacts. 1/10 of an inch of ice or more. This is the Charlotte-Mecklenburg area. You got the triad of the Carolinas, Greensboro, High Point, Winston-Salem, Roanoke up in here. This is not a good thing to see. Trust me. So this is going to be big as well. Very, very important. So pay attention to this. Several of our supporters and people that watch the videos live in this area. We got a population of people that live there. This is important to you. You're not going to get a bunch of snow, but you're going to have ice. That could cause power outages. Extremely problematic travel conditions. You got I-85, I-40, I-77 through there, and it's going to be a big deal. So please keep that in mind. All right? Finally, snow maps. Yes, lots of them going around. I get it. But it's not just about how much. It's the type of snow, and I talked about that before. And so for you all planning, especially property owners, and that little nugget that came from Tom, he said he's got some property, as I said, down in Baltimore and elsewhere around the East Coast. I never thought of it that way, right? It's like understanding impacts to business owners, hurricanes, storms, and there's more to it than meets the eye. That's what my point is. And it's the type of snow. And when you look in here and you see these values, maybe over a foot, that's not the fluffy, very high ratio snow, 20-1 or whatever. We're talking like wet, dense snow, those big, fat, wet snowflakes, very easy to pile it up, and it's heavy because there's more moisture in it, because the atmosphere is not quite dry and frigid like we see later in the winter usually, although it's been hard to come by these last few years. Anyhow, D.C. up through Baltimore, luckily for Tom and his colleagues through there, and anybody else with interest. If you love snow, sorry, this doesn't look real good for you. You have to get into central Pennsylvania here, but at least through the major corridor up through here, at least headed up towards Wilmington, Delaware, and vicinity, doesn't look too bad. But interior areas, and Philly's included, big time snow. And this only goes through Wednesday morning, as James Spann tweeted this. Thursday morning. As this product continues, you'll see it would fill in over Massachusetts. So through Boston, areas west and south from there, yes, you're looking at the potential of some very heavy wet snow through the big cities here. Not so bad from Baltimore, Washington, Baltimore, Philadelphia, snow, but not walloped. It doesn't look like. New York might have a little bit more because you can be closer to the colder air source. Interior portions of the New England, southern New England, and definitely Allentown, back towards Harrisburg, Hershey, Lancaster. I could see some pretty big totals through here because you're going to be in the denser part of that air mass that'll support more snow early. The big killer through here that could screw up snow totals would be sleet and freezing rain, or just rain. If the low is a little bit more north and west, you know how this stuff goes. So a couple things. First of all, I know a lot of you might be wondering, well, are you going? Because you hadn't talked about that yet. And the short answer is no, I'm not going up for this one. I'm working on finishing up the Hurricane Highway Season 1. That is extremely important to me, and I'm several months behind because we had a much busier hurricane season than I had anticipated. And I got to get this done before December 31st. I've got 3 episodes left. I'm editing them now. I've got interviews I've got to do. It is extremely important to me to finish that by New Year's Eve. And B, heavy wet snow, there's just not much for me to report on that other people aren't going to be reporting on already. If it was a blizzard, a bomb cyclone, you know what I mean? Where it has more of an intrigue to it, and I could go up to Allentown and just sit there, but then I'm days later getting this series done. There's just not much that I can do. Like, what am I going to do that other people aren't already doing on social media? And plus, it's a really kind of strange time of year to be traveling. You know what I'm saying? With the whole pandemic thing and all the increase in numbers. Give it a little bit more time. Get into January. See how that goes. There are travel restrictions up there. I would have to get tested before I go. I really don't want to have to deal with that right now if I don't have to. And I want to choose the right event where we're going to have, those blizzard conditions with the whiteout and the 70-mile-an-hour wind. And this is not going to be that. However, I'm a smart guy, and I've got backup plans, and I've got people. And what we're going to do is, and it's already been put into motion, we're going to have a live camera from out here near Riverhead and Baiting Hollow in New York. Already got a live cam up there from one of our colleagues. And over here, let's see if I can zoom in on it, one of our patrons and supporters in Grafton, which is just down here near Worcester, Mass. Young man by the name of Brady. I FedExed to him today a Nest camera, and he's going to set it up at his property tomorrow when he gets it, and we're going to be able to watch what happens with that. This will be exclusive to our patrons and our supporters. Is our way of saying, hey, you know what? We got some technology. Let's try some things. Got a little bit of a budget to be able to ship stuff, and believe me, it's not cheap to ship stuff overnight that weighs more than a pound through FedEx. Trust me. But it's worth it because we're going to have a heck of a view before the storm even gets started. And really appreciate Brady being willing to do that. And that's going to be in a pretty good area, I think, right through here in possibly some very heavy snow. So there will be some coverage, and I'll put a few clips on social media, of course. Might even share some of it with the Weather Channel as well. But our patrons, see that down there, that crowd-funded science, they make all of this possible. So this will be a little bit of a, I'll be able to cover it while I'm still here working on what I need to work on. See, it's a win-win situation. We got the people, and if this works out like I'm hoping, we can do more of this in the future for systems that I just can't get to for whatever reason. So in that way, it's kind of a good little experiment. All right. Mondays always go long because there's a lot to talk about, but there you go. You're up to date on the tropics and what's going on with winter weather, at least through this winter storm, and we'll see what happens. All right, so Brady will get his camera tomorrow. He'll set it up. I will, like I said, post clips from time to time. If you are on our Patreon, you'll be able to watch those cameras, the one from Baiting Hollow, New York, right on Long Island Sound, or Grafton in Massachusetts starting tomorrow. And we'll see what happens with this winter storm. It'll be really cool. I'll be there virtually. And why not? Because that's the way everything has gone in 2020. See, we still accomplish what we need to accomplish thanks to technology. All right, you guys have a great rest of your Monday. As always, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. Nice to have you on your side of the screen. Stay safe out there if you're in the path of this storm, especially western North Carolina and all that ice. Cecil, I'm talking to you. Stay put, buddy. All right. That is it. Have a good rest of your Monday. I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. I'll talk to you again next week.